I confronted this person. I said, come to fucking
Meet me in the park,
meet
10
me.
a.m.
Yeah, meet me at this place right now. We're going to fucking duke it out. Let's start this thing, fool. Hello, I'm Sam.
And I'm Amelia.
Welcome back to Us Duo Podcast where we aim to build a better mindset for better relationships.
Yeah, and this week on relationships and mindset, a bit of both, we're going to be digging all the way back into the deep, dark caves of bad memories.
Shit, some deep trenches, eh?
Yeah. So you get your
Little shovels?
spatulas. Oh, yes.
Spatulas? What the fuck? You're just getting cooking utensils with plastic ones.
Hey, whatever works, right? Whatever works. So we're going to dig deep into some of these bad memories or worst memories of ours. And we're just going to dive deep into what are some things that we've learnt and some key lessons that we've taken away from these moments.
That's right. All memories are good memories.
Yeah, and every experience is an opportunity to learn and grow, and that's what we believe in, and that is why we're doing this.
That's right. So let's just start. What is one of your worst memories?
Well, I wanted to start off with saying this is actually really hard because for me, I think from a very young age, I've learnt to, it's kind of like that forgive and forget. So if there's a really bad thing that happened to me where I truly didn't like it in that point in time, I lock it away and I forget about it and I never look back. So when I look back and trying to think whenever I'm asked these type of questions, it's actually really hard for me to think of something. And what I was reflecting on when this occurs is that sometimes bad things happen repeatedly. And I think it's due to this reason is because I just lock it away, I forget about it, and then a similar situation happens again. And I forgot that it happened, so I haven't learned from that moment.
So what you've done is you've got a little box. You put the memory inside the box. You
Yeah,
close
just
it.
threw away
You put
the
a
key.
and you're like fuck this bitch
Yeah,
away.
whoop.
That's it.
But anyways, so it did take me a while to think of something. But one of the ones, these are just common memories that I have, and it's always family. Back when I was younger, I was not a happy child growing up in my family. I'm not saying that the family upbringing wasn't good or anything, but just for me growing up, I just wasn't happy. And one of the ones that I could really think about is I did always feel alone, but it wasn't alone because I didn't have siblings, I didn't have friends. I just felt like I was alone in terms of, even though I'm surrounded by people, I didn't feel like I had anyone I could share my true feelings with or share my thoughts or anything I wanted to say. And with that, I felt really lonely. But I wanted to give some examples. And I remember that all my other siblings, every year they would go back to Hong Kong, or like a few months they go back to Hong Kong. And I was the only one that would stay behind in Australia most of the time. And in the upbringing, it was bad to talk back to your parents. It was bad to question or just kind of whinge or whine and be like, how come I don't get to go? So I never said anything about it. I'm just like, okay. I just learned to just be like, go with the flow. And from that, like subtly, I don't think it was very prominent, but over the years I did think about it. But subtly at that time, I was just like, why am I always the one that's in Australia? How come they get to go and have fun in Hong Kong and I don't? So that was one of those memories.
So then what did you feel at the time?
Lonely.
Outside of the loneliness? Was it just purely loneliness?
Yeah, lonely, sad, and be like, how come I don't get to have fun? Because kids is all about having fun. And obviously, if you get to fly, that's fun, right?
Yeah.
But I get to stay at home and didn't go anywhere. Hung out with my dad. So that was something.
But then why was it such a bad memory for you specifically?
I think with it, along with a lot of other family situations that happened, it always put me in this position where I felt like I had no one. Like I couldn't talk to anyone. I couldn't share my feelings. I couldn't share my opinions or thoughts. And this kind of added to it or was an addition to it as well.
So that sort of emphasized the loneliness and not really being able to share what you're feeling and
Yeah.
express it, right?
Because even within the family upbringing, it's just like you can't talk back. If someone says you got to do something, you just got to do it. You
Yeah.
don't have your opportunity to be like, oh, I don't like this. You just got to do it. So it just added to it. Like I won't go deep into all this other stuff that happened, but
Yep.
it's just this situation stood out amongst while all these other family things that happened.
And what do you think you learned from it?
Yeah, I think for the longest time, I was always blaming other people and being like, no one cares about me, no one thinks about me. I'm always just on my own, blah, blah, blah. But in hindsight, over time, and especially now, I've realized that I've grown up to be a really independent person. And aside from not being able to go to Hong Kong, like I still got to go at the end of the year. I just didn't go as often as my other siblings did. So I still got to go. So it's not like they never took me. But I did grow a really strong bond with my cousin and just a whole bunch of other family members that I don't think my siblings got to bond with as well. So I had the opportunity to grow with a different side of the family, which I'm grateful for now. And just really learnt how to do things on my own and know that it's okay to do things on your own.
You're forced to grow up independently, purely on yourself. You didn't need to rely on nobody. You were the, you know what I mean. You had your ground, your solid
Yeah, but
grounding.
it wasn't just about like doing things like taking yourself to the shops or things like that, but it's like even looking after yourself in terms of self-reflecting, knowing how to think about things and do things on your own in terms of taking care of yourself. It wasn't just like the basic things like driving or riding your bike to the shops or going to make food by yourself. It's like the deeper things as well. I learned a lot of that, like doing it alone.
Which is good because it's essentially shaped what you are now, right?
Yeah.
The reason why I said you're very independent now is because I can see that in you now, and even when I first met you, you're very much someone that you just did your own shit.
I've adapted to that type of thing where you're self-sustainable.
Yeah, your mindset, you had to basically be like that. You had to rely on yourself. So I can definitely see just your habits every day, your mindset on things, how you carry yourself. It's very much independent.
I think there's a downfall, there's a good and a bad. So the downfall is that I don't share my problems with other people, but the good thing that comes out of it is I can truly sit with myself and try and decipher and break apart the problem, not just being like, "Oh, this is shit. Why is this happening to me?" I truly sit down like, "Okay, this is a problem. What potentially could have affected it for this problem to happen? What do I need to do, blah blah blah." So I'm actually dissecting the problem logically. I'm not like just thinking of it emotionally, and that's what I've learnt from a very young age.
No, that's really good. And like I said, you can definitely tell just by your character of that. You're very much, you carry yourself like that in anything and everything that you do.
Yeah.
Which I guess, yeah, and from a pro, it's good because you can carry yourself like by yourself in terms of making decisions, reflecting, self reflections, and learning. But in terms of the carrying the, I guess the expressions and whatnot, you're very much like, I keep that to myself, which can be a hindrance at times because then you can't really express yourself how you truly feel. So
What about you? Any deep, dark, secret bad memories?
not really deep or dark. I think
So you didn't have to dig very far?
no, not really. I didn't have
So you
a
had the spatula.
yeah, I had a spatula, just like a plastic kitchen one.
Yeah, share
Yeah, I
us your
don't have
memory.
a treasured box, unfortunately. Mine's kind of like in my earlier times. I remember biggest thing that really fucked me up was being consistently compared as a young child. So what I mean by that is all my family members used to be like, "Why are you like him?" So don't be like this guy because I was a bad one, and I was constantly compared with different family members' kids. Oh, you know, why are you not smart like him? Or even comments from the parents. It's like, oh, don't be like Sam because he's a piece of shit.
So other parents said that
Yeah,
to you.
both combination. Like it's more so the family friends' parents would compare me in front of them.
Sounds like a very typical Asian thing.
Yeah, and
Like at Asian dinners, right? You gather
not just
together
Asian
all
dinners, everything. Like if we would just see them on the streets, they would always compare
on the
me.
streets.
Yeah, and be like, oh, why
They
you
took it to
don't?
the streets,
Yeah,
yo.
yeah. So like I'd see them and they'd just be like, oh, don't be like this guy because he's a piece of shit. Whether
Mm.
it was my personality, just me being naughty or whatever it is. And I just felt like I was constantly compared.
But can you give us a glimpse, including me, of what your perception of how you were when you were a kid?
I was a piece of shit.
But in what way?
In a way where, okay, so I was pretty loud. Like I was seriously a piece of shit. Like I was annoying. I just was, I don't know, I always cried. I always complained about
Like, did
random
you chuck
stuff.
tantrums? Did you
Yeah,
break things apart just because you were curious? Of,
I
like,
broke a lot of things apart just because I was curious. I
mm.
chucked like tannies, and I'm sure my sister could, provide some feedback on the testament on that. I wasn't the best in terms of a brother kid. I was seriously, I was pretty bad, but not like ADHD. You know what I mean, like that kind of
ADHD.
ADHD bad or anything like that. I was just, always kind of stirring the pot. And I think from a third person's perspective, it was probably an issue. So I was always constantly, and I mean seriously constantly, where anytime I'm out with parents and family friends are there with their kids and they would compare me in front of them.
I think that type of comparing in the Asian community is quite normal.
I know it's quite normal.
Yeah, but I get it. Like, it is quite traumatic, or not traumatic, but it is quite hurtful for a kid to hear that and be like, you don't want to be like him.
Yeah, and it kind of messed with my head because I wasn't sure what I was, in a way where I didn't know who I was as a true person.
Was that after you've been told that a few times, or was it initially you were kind of brushing it off, like you didn't really care about
Yeah,
it?
initially I for sure brush it off. Didn't really give a shit. I was just whatever. And it got to a point where I was like, oh, who am I? Trying to find my own identity. And how I got to that point was my second memory where I had a lot of issues with friendships. And an example of that is when I was younger, I used to hang out with different groups. I've mentioned this in the past. But when I was actually really young, I found that I would adjust my personality just to fit in or try to fit in or be recognized in that way. And I didn't know who I was in terms of me, myself. So I would always adjust,
But was that
change.
purely triggered from because people said don't be like you? Or what triggered you to be like, I don't know who I am?
It's a combination of the two because people are saying, don't be like this guy. He's reckless. He's a piece of shit. And I would look at myself and compare myself to those kids that I'm getting compared to.
So from that, you were like, I need to be like them
Yeah,
because
it's because, yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd be compared to kids who are fucking smart, fucking book smart to like physical smart, in terms of like good at sport from all sorts. So I'm like thinking, well, shit, who am I? Do I try to be like someone that's fucking smart, get A plus fucking grades like a typical Asian kid? Or do I try and be a kid who is physically good at sport? Do I need to try and fit in with those kinds of groups or people or be like that?
Yeah. So do you think from that you just felt like you needed to explore your avenues? So that's why you tried to go to
Yeah,
different types of
that's
friends
right.
and try to mold yourself into
That's
each
right.
group?
Yeah. So it's just trying to figure out who I was, me trying to mold myself to other people. And it got to the point where I was with different kinds of groups. And essentially I was like trying to adjust myself, but I was also bullied at the same time because whatever I looked, whether my voice was really high, my balls didn't drop, you know what I
Your
mean?
high pitched laugh.
Yeah, no, my high pitched
Yeah,
voice.
I know.
Yeah. So, you know what I mean? Like those in combination really fucked me up.
Did your voice actually drop lower, like later than other people, other guys?
Well, that's what everyone said to me when I
Mm.
was a kid.
But do you remember?
I don't even know. I didn't even realize my voice went deeper, to be honest. But yeah, I was constantly compared because it's like, oh, this guy, yeah, I'll hang out with this guy, but then fucking they'll bully me for some stupid reason.
Like,
For an example, like my voice, this guy's balls haven't dropped, or my personality, I'm being a dickhead to them, or they don't like me because I'm arrogant, or whatever it is. They would always pick on me for something. And outside of just my personality or my physical appearance, is also because I was bloody Asian.
so smaller frame, not as tall as the other
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
smaller build.
That's right. And that's why I was constantly trying to figure out myself whether I had to be someone that was more nerdy. Did I need to be more book smart? Did I need to be more someone that hung around, people who didn't care about school and just be reckless?
So every time you got bullied, whether if it's in the same group or a different group, how did you feel at the time? Were you more so confused, or were you like how did you feel?
It's a combination of the two. I was one fucking confused because I was like, shit, if I can't find my true self, then who the fuck am I? And who can I call friends? Because I always wanted to fit in. You know what I mean? So the sense of not being able to fit in, that makes you feel like shit, man.
Mm.
You know? It
It's
makes you
like it's kind of like that analogy in a way where you're door knocking, right? You're knocking on everyone's door and everyone's just rejecting you, telling you to get out. Is that
yeah.
kind of how you felt?
Yeah, pretty much. You're like, oh, hello, can I be your friend? And they're like, nah, fuck off, mate. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, aw.
Yeah, and I used to cry a lot when I was a kid too. So
Yeah.
I would cry.
How old are you talking about? Like primary school, high school?
Primary school to early high school. So there was a solid, like I would say from like year 1 to year 8 or 9, there was a solid straight period of me trying to figure out who the fuck I am. And I was constantly bullied, you know what I mean? Like, so that was like a long time of me trying to figure out myself. As a kid who knew nothing, I was immature, you don't know anything.
Yeah. So from that, what do you think you've learnt the most out of that?
The biggest thing that I learned was not giving a fuck. Like seriously, not giving it. Because when I got to year 11 and 12, I switched I switched the flip.
You just had enough.
I had enough. I was like, nah, fuck yeah. And I changed where I was more aggressive. The way I communicated, my mindset was different. Communication, the fact that, if you want to check me, I'm going to check you. I was
But
very
there must have been
aggressive.
something that flicked the switch though.
I personally feel like the bullying and the whole Asian stuff like that I went through, like the racism, definitely was the flipper.
Would you say that happened more towards just before you flipped?
Yeah, 100%. And I think as I grew older, I grew to understand me as a Asian Australian growing up in a school that was predominantly white Caucasians, had zero Asians in the school. So I had to learn to self-defend myself, gather a group of Asians just to get back. I had to figure out these things as I was getting older. And I think, yeah, that's what helped me flip the switch and go, no, this is not it.
Well, from hearing that though, because it happened from primary to early high school, I think one other good thing that I can see that came out of it is you had the opportunity to try different types of friends. And it wasn't about your initial thoughts was you trying to fit in, right? But I think in the end, you found people that fits you rather than you trying to fit into other people's groups. And I think in the long run, because you got the opportunity and you're trying so many times to be like, hey, can I be your friend? In the end, even though you got kicked out of the group or they didn't agree with you, you found someone that aligned with you because you have such a good group of friends now.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I think indirectly, for sure, it exposed me to different types of people, different backgrounds culturally, different people who communicate differently, who perceive things differently, who act differently. And
Yeah, and
you
I
know what I mean?
think one thing that you've actually gotten out of that from me seeing you is you actually have a really quick understanding of people's personality just by just a few words or just how they talk. And at first when you picked up on these things, like I would say I'm actually quite good at picking up on people's personalities, how they are, what type of person they are. But you're even better than that because there are times where you're like, oh, this person does this and this and this, like doesn't seem like the right type of person you want to hang out with. And at first I have my doubts. I'm like, nah, like surely, because like I'm not a person just because you're my partner and you said that. I'm not gonna just agree with you. I
Yeah.
like to see things for how it is
Yeah.
and then confirm and be like, okay, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And I would confidently say 99% of the time you were right. So I think you've learnt that. Like you may not know, but I feel like that's one good thing that you've learnt from being around all these people.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, like I said, indirectly probably had some influence and taught me a lot. But I also feel that me going through that experience definitely taught me the realization of different friendships and the maturity that you need to be, like the mindset that you have to have.
Different friendships, as in like you can have different types of friendships.
You can have different types of friendships and you can appreciate different types of people. But there's also, like you said, the people that you should gravitate towards and the people that you should put a little
Keep at
guard
arm's
up. You know what
length
I
or
mean?
something.
Yeah, arm's length,
Mm.
transaction.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I definitely see it. And I think although it happened throughout almost your school life, but you've learned a lot from that.
Yeah, 100%.
Nice, nice. Yeah, so another memory that I can think of is also during school years. I think it's just like the teenager life when you're all growing up, everyone's just like having their rebel life. This is my rebel season. I never wanted to be at home, and yeah, I just had a lot of arguments at home, was never happy. Again, like just reinforcing why like I can only rely on myself and I couldn't share my thoughts. And I think it's just a little bit on the back of this first problem that I had where I felt like I couldn't speak my opinions, I wasn't allowed to speak up. And because I wasn't allowed to speak up, I never did. So when I had arguments with my parents or family, I or something that I didn't agree with, I never really spoke up. And then I got to that point sort of like you where you've just had enough, right? And then you bottle everything up and you just explode. So when I explode, that obviously makes your family be like, what the hell? Why are you so rude? Where did this come from? And stuff like that. So I think from bottling up, I never showed my true self. So I had all these thoughts and opinions that no one ever knew about me. They just probably were like, oh, she'll be fine with it. She'll be okay with it. But really, I wasn't because I wasn't my true self. And I learned two things from it because I ran off, not ran away, but I always went out at night. Went out at night, didn't come home till like 4 a.m., 6 a.m., sometimes don't even come home. And that, like in a bigger picture, you just run away from your problems, right? You never actually sat down and talked to the person and work out your problems. You're just running off and being like, I don't want to be at home. They're just going to be at home and then I'll come back home when they've gone to work or when they're not home. So I've just never solved the problem. So what I've learnt from this is just it prolonged the issue. So I did this throughout almost my whole high school years and it prolonged the issue to the point that bad habits continued. So every time there was a disagreement, it would turn into an argument where it didn't need to be if I just learnt to talk about that problem face on and discuss about it where it's just adult to adult talking, and then just talk through the problems rather than waiting till it bottled up, lashing out, and then blaming people. Like it wouldn't have become a habit.
Yeah. So you essentially you didn't face the problem. You always just ran from it because you thought that was the best way to handle it, right?
Well, I just wanted to escape it, I guess. It's just you don't want one, you're like they're not going to listen to me anyway. Two, cuz I wasn't a confrontational person in a way where it's like, okay, let's face this problem. I was like thought I was being the bigger person by going away, being like, okay, if you don't like what I'm doing, I'll just stay away.
You just fuck off,
Yeah.
pretty much, yeah.
That's my train of thought back then. But although you may be a bigger person by not instilling an argument or talking about the disagreements and just being away from the problem's still not being solved because once you come back and you argue again, the same problems are just coming back into the circle.
So you'd say your train of thought at the time was really very much like, if I stay away from the problem, that's going to fix the problem.
No, my train of thought was I'm the problem because every time we argue, it's like, okay, well, I can see the common denominator is me, then I'll just leave. And if I leave, you won't argue, family's happy, I'm not around, solve the problem.
So then ultimately, what do you think you learned from this then?
So that's the thing that I've learned is although it's painful to sit there and talk about the problems and trying to level out the problem, you should probably face it right away and just talk about it rather than running away, coming back and then having the same arguments and you just run away again. And then this became like a circle. That's why I'm saying it became a habit. So it became a habit for both me and the receiving end where it's just like, okay, we'll just wait until next time we argue, we just argue all over again. And it's just like this cycle, this toxic cycle. But the other thing that I also learned from it is that partially it is my fault because I bottled up to the point that no one understood how I truly felt. So if I truly talked about something right away, so this is why I appreciate the way that you think and why early on when we were dating, I learned a lot from you is because you said things straight away. Like if you didn't agree with something and it's not about like, oh, this is fucking shit. It's just like, hey, I don't like what you did just there. I don't totally agree with it. I don't feel like that was right. And it's just talking about it as like a true adult and putting it out on the table rather than hiding it until you've had enough. Then you say something about it, and then people are like, whoa, I thought you were fine with it this whole time. Or this is the first time I've heard that you're unsatisfied with this. Just talking about the problems earlier and don't bottle up.
Yeah. Okay. And then after you realized the reality and what you learned from it, were there real positives after learning that later down the track?
Well, with this particular situation, I feel like it didn't really solve much from that immediately, like the first few years, because then I started voicing myself a lot more. Then I started talking about my feelings a lot more. But because, again, going back to that habit thing, what other people are used to me being, now it just sounds like I'm always complaining. But it's just me trying to voice myself a lot more, but I really wasn't complaining. It's just I'm trying to voice myself. So that's what I mean. Like it grew this habit for me and the other people on the receiving end. And now they have to readjust to who this new person is.
They're tripped out.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're
So
thinking,
I think it took a long time to unlearn for both ends.
that's why it's really important to be able to voice yourself, but not just voicing yourself, but to have that line of communication where you guys can both talk it out.
Yeah, and I think it's just really important because like I wouldn't say there's a blame on anyone, that both ends is just that we have to be open, like anyone, not just like me
Yeah.
and whoever I'm talking about. It's just anyone out there, we just have to be open, and if someone has something to say, like an opinion or a feeling, be okay to receive it unless they were like, purely threatening you or something like that. But they're just truly giving their opinions, feelings, be open to receive it and actually listen, not just sit there and listen to the words go in. You actually sit there, listen, and feel how they feel, and then try and put your thoughts and opinions in there together, discuss, and come with a solution or stepping stones to move forward from where you are now.
I 100% relate to that. I wouldn't say that's a memory for me, but there's definitely situations where I have been in similar scenarios. Like for an example, I remember a long time ago, I used to date this girl, and this other chick used to hang out with us, which was pretty cool.
Right, like a third chick.
Yeah. So we used to be in a big group, and this one chick, which is really cool, right? She had car, she hung out with
Wait,
us.
is this the girl that went to see the sneakers?
No, not that one. No. This is after. This is way after.
For those who haven't heard, there's an episode about cheating, and this girl went to see sneakers.
Well, I wouldn't say cheating. I don't know, but it's.
No, I'm saying that's the cheating episode.
Yeah. Speculating, but
anyways, derailed.
Yeah. So backtrack. It's this girl who used to hang out with us. Long story short, I liked this other girl, and we were in.
Right. Okay. Let's give some names because I'm confused. So.
Okay. Wait. So I won't name names. I'll say nicknames. So the girl that hung out with us, which was cool. Let's call her Red.
Let's call her Cool Girl.
Cool Girl. Okay. Cool Girl. And then the one that I actually was chatting up and talking to.
Were you dating her? Or
no, not yet. But I was going to.
Yeah.
I'll call her
Jemima from Play School.
What?
Yeah. Okay. Jemima.
Okay, Jemima. Anyway, so long story short, I've been in lots of conversations with Jemima. Okay, so we're getting close. I'm feeling her out. Whatever. Anyway, Jemima knows Cool Girl. They're actually friends in some way.
Good friends.
Not good friends, but they're friends.
Yeah.
Anyway, Cool Girl went behind my back to talk shit to Jemima to say that I was a bad guy.
Was there anything that you actually did to trigger that though?
Nothing.
So Cool Girl
anyway,
was
so
not
she
Cool
was just saying stuff like I'm not cool, I'm not good because I'm just not good for this person, Jemima. That is. I found out from Jemima that Cool Girl was talking shit. So obviously, being cut deep like that, I guess the feeling that I had at that time was, fuck, this chick, Cool Girl, just fucking stabbed me in the asshole.
So she was not cool in the end.
She wasn't cool anymore. And I was like, dude, what the fuck? So most cases you talk shit about the person and not confront the person. I confronted this person. I said, come to fucking...
Meet me in the park, 10 a.m.
Yeah, meet me at this place right now. We're going to fucking chat. All right? We're going to fucking duke it out.
Taking shits.
We're going to battle it out with our fucking
Words.
Pokemon cards. No. Anyway, we met up and I pretty much said, look, this is what's happened. This is what I've heard. Why did you do this? And I'm like, before that, I wasn't a person that did that because I was very much a person who was like, oh, you talk shit about me or you talk bad about me. Oh, okay. Then it must be my fault. Like I said,
Or you just let it be, right?
I let
You're
it
like,
be.
okay, it is what it is.
Yeah, because I had so many issues with, friendships as I was younger. So I never did any of those kind of confrontational stuff. So for me to actually come out and be like, hey, this is what's happened, what's going on. It was just such an easy process because then she was just like, hey, I'm sorry. I was out of line. I did this and that.
Did she ever explain why she said that though?
Under Cool Girl's advice, she said,
Impressions.
well, she said she did that because I think she had feelings for me or something. And I was like, dude, that's not cool because you should, don't do that. And it was sorted, like, you know what I mean? Whereas if I didn't approach the person, I didn't, have that conversation with that person, then we could have been.
Everything's just based off assumptions. Like she might be assuming something about you, you might be assuming something about her, nothing gets solved.
Nothing gets solved, and it's just a massive circle, and it goes around and around. I'll be talking shit about her, she'll be talking shit about me. So things don't get sorted.
Yeah.
Whereas practicing what you preach, I guess, in your case, how I relate to you is just being more open and actually sorting out the issue at that point in time.
Yeah, and that's what I've learned a lot from you is just seeing you do that. And it wasn't just because you tell me to just be upfront or just talk to someone. It's actually seeing you in action and then seeing how the people actually react. 99% of the time, people actually are okay with that chat. They're just like, oh, sorry, I didn't know that I was doing this, or I didn't mean for that to happen this way, or something like that. Like the conversation always went better than how I would play it in my head.
Yeah, how you anticipated it, right? Yeah. And I think there's a right and a wrong way to how you approach with that conversation. Because there's people who are like fully aggressive, like you're a fuckhead, blah, 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 blah. Look, you've got to know your means of how you have that
like you just got to be respectful and just be open, like really just be open and no judgments. Like go in that conversation with no judgments at all. Like don't have expectations, don't have judgment. Just be like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is how I kind of took what you said or what you did. I just wanted to talk about it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my non-bad memory, I guess.
But when you first decided to start confronting people, were you ever shit scared?
100%. Because I was never confident. I was never a confident person. I was always scared. I was always very timid. I never spoke my mind.
What gave you the confidence? Were you just like, I just got to do it?
I really think the flip of the switch really pushed me to force myself to learn. Like even I wasn't confident still, but I still said stuff. Like I still was willing to open my mouth.
Yeah. And over time, as you practice, it gets easier.
As you practice, you preach,
What? It just gets easier.
It just gets easier.
You preach. Some good English.
Practice, you preach. Yeah, was it you? Whatever. Anyway,
no, it's just practice what you preach.
Yeah,
that's a different meaning.
Whatever. I don't know. Yeah.
To sum it all up, though, now that you are where you are now, what are the good things in a nutshell that you think you see yourself have learned from all these bad memories you've shared?
Man, I think I learned a lot since then. And I think, initially bad experiences, and I probably went through a lot of shit when I was a kid. And I haven't told anyone this stuff. Not even my sister knows this shit.
Now the listeners have heard it.
Now everyone knows, but to me at the time, it was terrible. It was probably one of the worst experiences because for me, I was very much like, I want to fit in. I want to be liked. You know what I mean? I wanted to be a part of a group and have friends.
Yeah, but I think what also shows, like I think is something that everyone can learn from, is that from an outsider's perspective, they may not see something as that serious, but for an individual, they may think it's like the worst thing that has ever happened in their life. Yeah. So it's just very perspective. One thing that our Muay Thai coach or trainer has also said, which I think can give a very good example analogy, is that everyone has different tolerance of pain. Like you could just lightly bump someone in the shoulder And one person could be like, "Oh shit, sorry, I didn't mean to like bump you." And then the other person will be like, "Oh shit, why the hell did you knock me over?" or something like that. So everyone's perception is very
Yeah.
different. So I think even though that your journey from your primary to high school or trying to fit in, that was a very deep, dark memory of yours. But from the outsider's perspective, they might have thought that it's just another kid trying to learn or navigate their life.
The journey that I went through definitely taught me a lot about friendships. Taught me a lot about myself in terms of me, who I needed to be, confidence, the way I communicated, my reaction, how to treat people. It all summarized in that whole perspective.
And it makes a lot of sense because I know that you've talked about it to me before, but this in depth, I don't think I've actually heard it. And it makes sense in terms of seeing how you look at people, not look at people, how you understand people. And it makes sense why you can pick it up so well.
Yeah, and even to this day, I value friendships a lot. You know what I mean? And I don't have that many friends like I used to.
But that's a good thing that you
Yeah.
know where the true friendships lie and you know where the other ones.
You know when you sniff a rat, when you fuck them off. Fuck out of here! The fuck out of here!
Like how you plowed that toad over our fence by accident.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've learnt is definitely just it's okay to speak up. And even if other people aren't okay for you to speak up, that's not your problem. That's what I've learnt. Like you have an opinion, you're allowed to voice it. If someone else doesn't like it, like I'm talking about me talking about it respectfully. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
hey, this is how I feel about it. If someone else doesn't like it, don't want you to speak up.
just means they're not open. They're not
Yeah,
open
and they're
for.
not open, and that again ties back into knowing the right people to hang out with or the right people that you should keep as close friends, close, I don't know, network, whatever you want to call it. And that is something that I've learned from that.
Yeah, and I think even if you don't agree with it, you can just respectfully decline. You know what I mean? Like if you, for an example, if I didn't agree with your whatever that you've said, I'd be like, respectfully, I respect your, your comments and whatever your feedback is, but I don't agree.
Yeah. And the other thing that I've learned is also, I think, something from a young age is just how to be grateful because bringing back that example of how my siblings went to Hong Kong and all that kind of stuff, yeah, that might be fun, but I can have fun in my own context too. Like, fun isn't just either or. Like, fun can't be just over there and you can't have fun over here. Or you can't be happy because they're doing that and you can't be happy. You just have to find the small things in whatever you're doing at that point in time or what you have around you at that point in time and just be grateful for it. So, for example, being grateful to have such a great cousin to hang out with, which I call her like my sister because I hung around her so much. And just being grateful that I learned so much because something very, very niche or very particular. Stayed back in Australia. I hung out with my dad a lot, and he was a mechanic at the time. I learned a lot of mechanic skills just watching him do things, and I was only, 8 years old, and I wouldn't have learned that if I went to Hong Kong every single term holiday. So it's just remembering that there are little things that you can be grateful for, and you learn something out of whatever situation you are in at that point in time.
All these experiences in turn teaches you something positive in the long run. Like I was saying before, it doesn't matter if it was a positive or a negative situation or scenario. We all learn from that moment.
It's just switching your brain from thinking, oh, it's a crap situation. It's just thinking, what can I learn from this and what can I be grateful for if there's anything to be grateful for in that situation. So it's either gratitude or learning.
It's always moving forward, right?
Yeah, ever forward.
Yeah. Shout out to Max Tuning, mate. Appreciate you from Australia.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, Ever Forward is his
Oh
brand.
yeah, that business that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's any bad memories that you also have been going through or have had gone through and you're still trying to work through it, maybe just try and think of these things. See if there's something that you've learned from it. Maybe you gained a new group of friendship, you've gained new knowledge, something you learnt because you had to force yourself to learn. These are all good things that happen out of something. So let us know in the comments if you want to share some of your stories.
Yeah. And just remember, every situation could be a good experience. regardless of what it is.
Yeah, that is all.
Thank you for your time, and we will see you in the next one.
Okay, then see you. Bye.
Peace.